Hello, okay? So I'm here. Let me take this off. I usually go hike, and I am at this house instead. Look at this beautiful view, the sun setting. And I am, let's see if we get it. There it is. And I am here, and I haven't read George MacDonald yet today, and today is the day that I read it. And so hopefully that's, here we go. Oh, good, it did cinematic, I think. So let's just read it in this beautiful outdoor setting. And so we're reading Sir Gibbie. It's a book from the 1800s, and I'm gonna start now. I usually, anyway, George MacDonald was C.S. Lewis's spiritual mentor. And so he said every book, he wrote the Narnia books, every book he ever wrote, he quoted George MacDonald either directly or indirectly. Here it is, George MacDonald. So anyway. All right, we are, okay. I was like, we might finish. We're not gonna finish tonight, but we're gonna just go into it. So trust, I always say, just trust that it came to you at the right time. I want you guys to see the sun setting too, but it might make everything look dark around. So anyway. So Sir Gibbie, Gibbie is this mute boy that came into this inheritance, and he brought home this woman that was like homeless, and Miss Murkison is renting out a room to him, and she told him that if he ever did the like again, she would give him notice to quit. And he looked in her face, and she stared a moment in return, then threw her arms around his neck and kissed him. "You're the bonniest creature ever, a muckle idiot that ever man saw," she cried. "And again, you do not take the better care. You better take care of yourself, or off to heaven before you know where or what you're about," right? So because there's the saying right here. Let's see. Her feelings, if not her sentiments, experienced a relapse when she discovered that one of her few silver teaspoons was gone, which beyond a doubt the woman had taken. She abused her again, scolded Gibbie with much vigor, but Gibbie said to himself, "The woman is not bad, for there were 2 more silver spoons on the table. Even in the matter of stealing, we must think of our own beam before our neighbor's mote." You know, Jesus says, take the log out of your own eye before you try to take the speck out of your brother's eye. And so that's what he's talking about. It is not easy to be honest. There is many a thief who is less a thief than many a respectable member of society. The thief must be punished, and assuredly the other shall not come out until he has paid the uttermost farthing. Gibbie, who would have died rather than cast a shadow of injustice, was not shocked at the woman's depravity like Mistress Murkison. I'm afraid he smiled. He took no notice either of her scoldings or her lamentations. But the first week after he came of age, because he was going to get his money, right, he carried her a present of 12 spoons, right? 12 silver spoons. All right, this is where we were last time. So I'm so glad you get to be, it's such a serene environment. I hope you get to see that and experience it with the roses around us, flowers and stuff. Anyway, I hope it's loud enough. I didn't bring my mic I forgot, it's in my car. Fergus could not tell Ginevra what he had seen, and if he told her father, she would learn that he had been playing the spy. To go to Mr. Sclater would have compromised him similarly. And what great occasion was there? He was not the fellow's keeper. That same day, Gibbie went back to his guardians. At his request, Mrs. Sclater asked Ginevra to spend the following evening with them. He wanted to tell her about Donald. She accepted the invitation, but in a village near the foot of Glashgar, Donald had that morning done what was destined to prevent her from keeping her engagement. He had posted a letter to her. In an interval of comparative quiet, he had recalled the verses he sang to her as they walked that evening, and now sent them, completed in a very different tone. Not a word accompanied them. All right, here are the words. "My thoughts are like the fireflies, pulsing in moonlight, my heart like a silver cup full of red wine, my soul a pale gleaming horizon, whence soon light will flood the gold earth with a torrent divine. My thoughts are like worms in a starless gloaming, my heart like a sponge that's filled with gall, my soul like a bodiless ghost sent a Roman to bide in the murk till the great trumpet call. But peace be upon you, as deep as your lonesome. Break not hour nor fair dreamy sleep, to think of the lad with the weight in his bosom, and at sent a cry till ye out of the deep. And once sent a cry till you're out of the deep. Some sharp rocky height to catch a fair morning, ayant the knights of this world hill climb, for nane shall say, look, he sank down at her scorning, what raised by the hand she held frank out to him. All right, that's it. I'll show you it so you can translate it yourself if you'd like. They speak in a Scottish brogue, so hey, how are you?
Are you ready?
No, it's okay though. Come on out. I'll push pause. All right, so welcome back to this picturesque setting. I was at my friend's house and I just said, I gotta go make a video because they're like my best friends. And so I went out, and then the husband came out and he didn't know. And so we just started talking, and I got home, worked out. Now I'm in part of my workout clothes and part of, anyway. And so I got Leia next to me. Say hi. Yeah, gross. Okay. I hope good. I have a mic as well. So here we go. Let's just go back to where we were. I love being outside, and I love the picturesque settings, but this is just what we get. You know, I'm gonna get this picture. There is this guy, I think he was 12, and he drew this picture and sold it at like a church, bake sale or whatever. But I had a child going through cancer, and not very many people know because he didn't want me to say it at the time. And all I could do was look at this picture on the mantle some nights, and it got me through. So I'll put it here for us. You know, when you have like art displayed at your work. So I'll just get it for us because, it helped me. And you can just look at it while we're reading this beautiful story by George MacDonald. You always get something so beautiful every time. God is like that. God just shows up in these videos in such a sweet way. So this guy's name was Samuel. He's still alive. And so is the person that I walked through cancer with. All right, so it looks so simple, but let's see if I can put it. I don't want it sideways. Let me just... All right. There we go. Okay. Whoops. Hold on. When I move, it'll move. Here we go. Okay, I want to be in front of the mic. So this chapter is called A Night Watch. And Gibbie he helped this woman that had a little, I think this one had a baby. Or maybe she didn't. No, she had a pocket. And the money that she had fell out of this hole in her pocket. And he just remembered having zero money. And so, anyway, I just read Donald's poem that he sent to Ginevra. And don't worry, if you don't know the story, it doesn't matter. Just welcome in. Know that you're here for a reason. It's going to take me a while to edit those first 6 minutes back with this, but I plan to do it and still release it on the same day that you guys normally get it. If I can. The letter was handed with one or two more to Mr. Galbraith at the breakfast table. He did not receive many letters now and could afford time to one that was for his daughter. So it was addressed to his daughter, Ginevra, right? He laid it with the rest by his side and after breakfast took it to his room and read it. Right? This was hers and he'd read it anyway. He could no more understand it than Fergus could the epistle to the Romans. Fergus is he's has a job as a pastor and he can't anyway. It's Romans is a little difficult, but Fergus is a fake and a phony. It's like if you've ever seen Grease. Olivia Newton-John says to John Travolta's character, "You're a fake and a phony, and I wish I'd never laid eyes on you." Whoa. Anyway, and therefore the little he did understand of it was too much. But he had begun to be afraid of his daughter. Her still dignity had begun to tell upon him in his humiliation. So Ginevra's father had lost all of this family inheritance that he got from his late wife, from Ginevra's mother, by speculating and putting it in stocks and ripping other people off, and then it came back to bite him, basically. He laid the letter aside and said nothing, and waited, inwardly angry and contemptuous. After a while, he began to flatter himself with the hope that perhaps it was but a sort of impertinent Valentine. Hold on. My eyes are just like all tired from the day. Okay. The writer of which was unknown to Ginevra. Wait. Yeah, perhaps it was. Okay. So, from the moment of its arrival, however, he kept a stricter watch upon her, and that night prevented her from going to Mrs. Sclater's. Gibbie, aware that Fergus continued his visits, doubted less and less that she had given herself to... the blotter, as Donald called the popular preacher. Blotter. I don't know what that means in the Scottish, slang. The blotter. It's not, bad. It's just more like... like a blather or something, or just someone who's faking. I don't know. Anyway, chapter LIV of age. Yay! Gibbie's becoming 21, so he can get his inheritance finally. It's so wonderful. All right, there's so many ways that this book can impact and change your life. I remember it all the time, and I see how C.S. Lewis is referencing it in his different Narnia books and all these different books. Hold on. I have a Kleenex now. So sometimes I get all teared up. Well, obviously I'm talking about... Anyway, I don't mean to lay that on you guys. Welcome to my channel. We've been through a lot. There were no rejoicings upon Gibbie's attainment of his 21st year. His guardian, believing he alone had acquainted himself with the dates, and desiring in his wisdom to avoid giving him a feeling of importance, made no allusion to the fact, as would have been most natural when they met at breakfast on the morning of the day. Okay, so he's in charge of his money and he likes control. And so anyway, that's Mr. Sclater. You'll see, he's growing. But urged thereto by Donald, Gibbie had learned the date for himself, and finding nothing was said, he did the, he can't speak, so he fingered the alphabet, right? To Mrs. Sclater, "This is my birthday." "I wish you many happy returns," she answered with kind impressment. "How old are you today?" Right? 21, he answered by holding up all his fingers twice, and then a forefinger. She looked struck and glanced at her husband, who thereupon, in his turn, gave utterance to the usual formula of goodwill and said no more. Seeing he was about to leave the table, Gibbie, claiming his attention, spelled on his fingers very slowly, for Mr. Sclater was slow at following this mode of communication. "If you please, sir, I want to be put in possession of my property as soon as possible." "All in good time, Sir Gilbert," answered the minister with a superior smile, for he clung with hard reluctance to the last vestige of his power. I just don't understand why, he gets some high from this. Hold on, I got some sparkling water. If you ever look up on YouTube, Oliver Twist, that song, "I do anything for you, dear." There's this sweet girl and her friend, and they sing it in harmony, and it's just so beautiful. And she's like, "Have you had your 8 cups of water today?" I think her name is Isabeau or something. Isabeau. She's got an amazing voice. Anyway. All right. It's late. I think it's 2 hours till midnight. So I gotta go to sleep soon. Okay. "All in good time, Sir Gilbert," answered the minister with a superior smile, for he clung with hard reluctance to the last vestige of his power. "But what is a good time?" replied Gibbie with a smile, which, none the less that it was of genuine friendliness, indicated there might be difference of opinion on the point. "Hello, I think a good time is right now. I'm 21 today." Whoops. Hold on. We'll lift that back up again. We can do that. All right. "Oh, we shall see," returned the minister coolly. "These are not things to be done in a hurry," he added, as if he had been guardian to 20 wards in the chancery before. He hadn't. This is his first one, right? "We'll see in a few days what Mr. Torrance proposes." "But I want my money at once," insisted Gibbie. "I have been waiting for it, and now it is time, and why should I wait still?" It's like, I've been waiting. I don't know how old he was when he told him, but he wasn't at college yet. I don't know how many years it's been in this book, but "to have patience, if for no other reason, Sir Gilbert," answered the minister with a hard laugh. Like, to have patience, right? Meant to be jocular, but indeed, such affairs cannot be managed in a moment. You will have plenty of time to make good use of your money if you should have to wait another year or 2. Donald warned Gibbie that this might happen with Mr. Sclater. So saying, he pushed back his plate and cup, a trick he had, and rose from the table. When will you see Mr. Torrey?" asked Gibbie, rising too and working his telegraph, right, with greater rapidity than before. "By and by," answered Mr. Sclater, and walked towards the door, but Gibbie got between him and the door, right? "Will you go with me to Mr. Torrey today?" he asked. The minister shook his head. Gibbie withdrew, seeming a little disappointed. Mr. Sclater left the room. "You don't understand business, Gilbert," said Mrs. Sclater. Gibbie smiled, got his writing case, sitting down at the table, wrote as follows. I love this. There's just, anyway, George MacDonald is just, like C.S. Lewis said, he never met another author so close to the Spirit of God. Like, anyway, I've read so many of his other books on here, so anyway, I'll stay in the story, okay? "Dear Mr. Sclater, as you have never failed in your part, how can you wish me to fail in mine? I am now the one accountable for this money, which surely has been idle long enough, and if I leave it still unused, I shall be doing wrong, and there are things I have to do with it which ought to be set about immediately. I am sorry to seem importunate, but if by 12 o'clock you have not gone with me to Mr. Torrey, I will go to Messrs. Hope and Waver. It sounds like lawyers, I think. Who will tell me what I ought to do next in order to be put in possession. It makes me unhappy to write like this, but I am not a child any longer, and having a man's work to do, I cannot consent to be treated as a child. I will do as I say. I am, dear Mr. Sclater, your affectionate ward, Gilbert Galbraith, right? Because he's been his ward this time. He took the letter to the study, and having given it to Mr. Sclater, withdrew. The minister might have known by this time with what sort of a youth he had to deal. He came down instantly, put the best face on it he could, said that if Sir Gilbert was eager to take up the burden, he was ready enough to cast it off, and they would go at once to Mr. Torrey. Funny, once there's a boundary, right? Anyway, with the lawyer, Gibbie insisted on understanding everything and that all should be legally arranged as speedily as possible. Mr. Torrey saw that if he did not make things plain or gave the least cause for doubt, the youth would most likely apply elsewhere for advice, and therefore took trouble to set the various points, both as to the property and the proceedings necessary, before him in the clearest manner. "Thank you," said Gibbie, through Mr. Sclater. "Please remember I am more accountable for this money than you, and am compelled to understand." Janet's repeated exhortations on the necessity of sending for the serpent to take care of the dove had not been lost upon him. Wow. Jesus said, "Be as innocent as a dove, but shrewd as a serpent." So it's referencing that. So sometimes workers know how to be that shrewd because they have to be in their job all the time. I have many lawyers that I have been having to deal with. And some of them are just amazing and so great. Some of them have been, not the ones I've worked with, but other people have been just so slanderous, unfortunately. But whatever, you have to grow up, and we get to face all kinds of different people in this world, and it teaches us how to be shrewd as serpents ourselves, but innocent as doves. Always be kind. God can deal with all of these people. All of us. It says God cannot be mocked. We will reap what we sow. So people who have slandered others unnecessarily and ridiculously, like, they're going to be held accountable before a perfect God. And so, anyway, the lawyer being then quite ready to make him an advance of money, they went with him to the bank, where he wrote his name and received a checkbook. As they left the bank, he asked the minister whether he would allow him to keep his place in his house till the next session, and was almost startled at finding how his manner to him was changed. He assured Sir Gilbert, with a deference and respect both painful and amusing, that he hoped he would always regard his house as one home, however many besides he might now choose to have. Wow. Because he was staying there for a while, and then he rented this place next to Donald. So now at last, Gibbie was free to set about realizing a long-cherished scheme. Like, he has these wonderful schemes, as God puts in each of us, right? There's this guy named Kevin Zadai that died and went to heaven and came back, and he says that. I have his book right here on my desk, on my table. One of his books. I'm not trying to sell his books. It's just called The Counsel of God. It's about Psalm 91. But anyway, he was saying that, and he saw one of the things he saw in heaven, and you can use discernment for anyone that has these experiences, that God has every dollar, I'm in the US, so it's dollar, euro, whatever denomination. God has every dollar marked for certain purposes, and that's what they're there for. And so when money comes your way, you're meant to be a good steward. And use it in the way that God intends you to use it. But, ask for his wisdom and discernment. So anyway, here are his schemes. The repairs upon the old house of Galbraith were now nearly finished. In consequence of them, some of the tenants had to leave, and Gibbie now gave them all notice to quit at their earliest convenience, taking care, however, to see them provided with fresh quarters, towards which he could himself do not a little, for several of the houses in the neighborhood had been bought for him at the same time with the old mansion. That's where his dad used to live, in this little tiny garret house, right? As soon as it was empty, he set more men to work, and as its internal arrangements had never been altered, speedily, out of squalid neglect, caused not a little of stateliness to reappear. He next proceeded to furnish at his leisure certain of the rooms, chiefly from the accumulations of his friend, Mistress Murkison. So she had a furniture shop, so he chose furniture from there when he could, right? By the time he had finished, his usual day for going home had arrived. While Janet lived, the cottage on Glashgar was home. Wow. Just as he was leaving, the minister told him that Glashruach was his. So Mrs. Sclater was present and read in his eyes what induced her instantly to make the remark. How could that man deprive his daughter of the property he had to take her mother's name to get? And so Mr. Sclater's answering, right? Why Mr. Galbraith lost the house, right? He had misfortunes, indicated Gibbie. I guess Gibbie is explaining it. And could not help it, I suppose. Yes, indeed, she returned. Misfortunes so great that they amounted to little less than swindling. I wonder how many he has brought to grief besides himself. If he had Glashruach once more, he would begin it all over again. All right, so she's saying, make sure not to give it to the father again, because he used it to get gambling money with. No, to get money for fake stocks, to tell other people that these stocks were really worth it, and then try to lay it on them. But there were other people laying it on him, using him the same way, and that's how he lost it. But anyway, then I'll give it to Ginevra, said Gibbie, and let her father coax her out of it and do another world of mischief with it, she rejoined. Gibbie was silent. Mrs. Sclater was right. To give is not always to bless. He must think of some way. With plenty to occupy his powers of devising, he set out. He would gladly have seen Ginevra before he left, but had no chance. He had gone to the North Church every Sunday for a long time now, neither for love of Fergus nor dislike to Mr. Sclater, but for the sake of seeing his lost friend. Had he not lost her when she turned from Donald to Fergus? Did she not forsake him too when she forsook his Donald? His heart would rise into his throat at the thought, not only for a moment. He never pitied himself. Now and then he had from her a sweet, sad smile, but no sign that he might go and see her. Whether he was to see Donald when he reached Daurside, he could not tell. He had heard nothing of him since he went. His mother never wrote letters. Oh, Janet is his mother now, because his birth mother had died when he was little, and Janet adopted him, which is Donald's mother. All right, let me get some water. It's so strange not being outside with you all. Except for one time it rained, I've almost read all of my books outside. Anyway, I just really wanted to get it done today. Otherwise, I could take you out tomorrow. But I'll be anyway. Anyway. Nah, I cannot, she would say. It would take all the pith out of me to write letters. And I have to say, I send the up road. It's sure to wind up here or later, at home or later. I don't know. She's She's speaking with her Scottish. I always say, if you understand what this is, write it out for us. There is a book that explains it. All right. Notwithstanding his new power, it was hardly therefore with his usual elation that he took his seat on the coach. But his reception was the same as ever. At his mother's persuasion, Donald, he found, instead of betaking himself again to bodily labors as he had purposed, like he was going to go work on the farm again, had accepted a situation as tutor offered him by one of the professors. He had told his mother all his trouble. "He'll be all the better for it at the end," she said, with a smile of deepest sympathy. "Though being my own, I cannot help being, in a way for him. But the Lord was the earthquake and the fire and the wind that rave on the rocks, though the prophet couldn't see them." Right? And then and in that passage, she said, I found him, and he was a still small voice, or anyway, the stillness. Donald will come out of this with more room in his heart and more light in his spirit. Gibbie took his slate from this ledge that's there. I'll just call it that. It's a weird word, and wrote, "If money could do anything for him, I have plenty now. I know your heart, my bairn." Oh, my little child, right? Replied Janet. "But na, Siller's but a dead horse for anything, and smacks of salvation." I don't know what he's saying. "Na, the poor fellow, men worst of the thickest of the dead roses as best as he can. Sir, that scratters me no doubt. Anyway, it's a fearful and wonderful thing, that drawing of heart to heart, and saying a great snap and start back, and there's miles between them. The Lord alone can get to the bottom of it, heal him. But I'm thinking there's more, until a heap more to come out of there to be done. And that's only my guess at it." Okay, look, you can translate it for us again if it's this paragraph, if you'd like. Gibbie told her that Glashruach was his. Then first the extent of his wealth seemed to strike his old mother. Like her and her husband just raised sheep for the lord of the land that owned this big castle thing called Glashruach. And now that's his. So it's like they're wards of one part of the hill of his land. She couldn't understand the extent of his wealth before. "You'll be the Lord, will ye then? Ah, sirs, to think of this house has been wee Gibbie, Well, it dings ya. The ways the Lord are to be thought upon. He made David a king, and Gibbie he made a lord. Blessed be his name," right? David was a shepherd boy, and Samuel came and anointed him to be king. And then Jesus was born in the line of David, King David, in that lineage, in the royal lineage. "Then they tell me the mountain is mine," Gibbie wrote. "Your husband shall be Laird of Glashgar if he likes." Na, said Janet with a loving look. "He's over old for that. He might not dear say easy for it. Please the Lord. I would fain go with him. And what better would Robert be to be Lord?" He doesn't need to be. Gibbie was letting him, anyway. "We pay no rent as it is, and he has many sheep to watch over as he can, as you well know. And from the other, no, he's growing old. I know nothing that he lacks, but Gibbie, to go on with him about the hill. A neighbour's laddie comes and goes to help him, but, says Robert, he's no Gibbie, but given Glashruach be yours, and my bonny man, you may go down there this very night and go get a look of the burn." That's the river, because it had risen, right? For the last time I was there, I thought it was creeping in another bank, some fearsome like for what's left of the old house. And the sooner it's looked after, maybe the better. Ah, Sir Gibbie, but you ought to marry the bonny Eddie and take her back to her own house. Anyway, Gibbie gave a great sigh to think of the girl that loved the hill and the heather and the burns, shut up in the city, and every Sunday going to that great church, with which, in Gibbie's mind, was associated no sound of glad tidings. To him, Glashgar was full of God, right? The hill, the nature, it's just like Maria in The Sound of Music, right? The hills are alive with the sound of music. My heart will be blessed. Anyway. I have my guitar over there. Don't worry, I'm not going to start singing the Sound of Music soundtrack. All right. So to him, Glashgar, that this Scottish, countryside was full of God. The North Church, or Mr. Sclater's church, well, he had tried hard, but had not succeeded in discovering temple signs about either. Like God wasn't expressed genuinely, right? Anyway, the next day he sent to the city for an architect, and within a week, masons and quarrymen were at work, some on the hill blasting blue boulders and red granite, others roughly shaping the stones, and others laying the foundation of a huge facing and buttressing wall, which was to slope up from the bed of the Glash Burn 50 feet to the foot of the castle, there to culminate in a narrow terrace with a parapet. Others again were clearing away what of the ruins stuck to the old house in order to leave it as much as might be in its original form. Because there's big river flooded through an earlier part of the book. There was no space left for rebuilding, neither was there any between the two burns for adding afresh. The channel of the second remained dry, the landslip continuing to choke it, and the stream to fall into the Glash Burn. But Gibbie would not consent that the burn Ginevra had loved should sing no more as she had heard it sing. Her chamber was gone. Ginevra's room that was there was washed away, but she used to listen outside of it to the river. It's like Antonio Carlos Jobim, is that who, or Gilbert? But anyway, this song called The Waters of March. A stick, a stone, it's the end of the road. It's a little alone, it's a sliver of glass. And the waterfall, it's the and the riverbank sings of the waters of March. It's the end of the despair. It's the joy in your heart. I can't remember the guy that wrote that. I thought it was Antonio Carlos Jobim, but I usually know it. It's just a weird time of the night, right? Anyway. Her chamber was gone and could not be restored, but another chamber should be built for her, beneath whose window it should again run. When she was married to Fergus and her father could not touch it, the place should be hers. Hopefully not, right? Married to Fergus. More masons were gathered and foundations blasted in the steep rock that formed the other bank of the burn. That's the river. Is it called a burn? The main point in the building was to be a room for Ginevra. He planned it himself with a windowed turret projecting from the wall, making a recess in the room and overchanging the stream. overhanging the stream. The turret he carried a story higher than the wall, and in the wall placed a stair leading to its top, whence over the roof of the ancient part of the house might be seen the great Glashgar, like the mountain that his parents live on, and its streams coming down from heaven and singing as they came. Wow. Anyway, if I remember, I'll put it in the description. I'm sure if I remember, I'll remember if I remember to look up the song. Anyway. Sorry, so go back. The turret he carried a story higher than the wall, and in the wall placed a stair to its top, whence over the roof of the ancient part of the house might be seen the great Glashgar and its streams coming down from heaven and singing as they came. Then from the middle of the first stair in the old house, the wall, 1.5 yards thick, having been cut through a solid stone bridge with a pointed arch, was to lead across the burn to a lake, landing on the new house. A close passage with an oriel window on each side, looking up and down the stream, and a steep roof. And while these works were going on below, 2 masons high on the mountain were adding to the cottage a warm bedroom for Janet and Robert, because they would have rheumatism and their bones would ache when it would get cold, so they're making them a warm room. What else would you do if you came into a lot of money like that? So wonderful. I'm so happy for Sir Gilbert in this story. It's even though it's a story, there are many times that George MacDonald was starving with his kids. They went lots of times without food. He had to write stories to keep making money, but he didn't want to sell out and write bad stories, right? And so anyway, he knows what it's like. So it's wonderful to celebrate, even in a story. I'll keep reading. Sorry, I know some people just like, tell us the story, right? It's like Princess Bride when he keeps interrupting. What? Not the kissing part. Anyway. The architect was an honest man and kept Gibbie's secret, so that, although he was constantly about the place, nothing disturbed the general belief that Glashruach had been bought and was being made habitable by a certain magnate of the county adjoining. So, someone important, right? Chapter LV. So, anyway. And the old house of Galbraith. All right, that's what's coming next. One cold afternoon in the end of October, when Mistress Kroll was shutting up her shop in the market, and a tumbler of something hot was haunting her imagination, right? Because she was still addicted to the whiskey some. Gibbie came walking up the long gallery with the light hill step, which he never lost. So, he's walks somewhat on his toes, and he's mute, and and startled her with a hand on her shoulder, making signs that she must come with him. She made haste to lock her door, and they walked side by side to it's called the Whitty Hill, right? As they crossed the end of it, she cast a look down Jink Lane and thought of her altered condition with a sigh. Then the memory of the awful time amongst the sailors in which poor Sam, his frightful death, was ever prominent, came back like a fog from hell, right? It was a horrible time that Gibbie had to go through as a child. And I read like 99% of it. Just because I might have read all of it. I think I did. But anyway, it's a difficult part. Anyway. But so far gone were those times now that, seeing their events more as they really were, she looked upon them with incredulous horror, as things in which she could hardly have had any part or lot. Maybe she's not been drinking for a while. I can't remember this part of the book. Then return her wanderings and homeless miseries, when often a haystack or a heap of straw in a shed was her only joy, whiskey always excepted. Last of all came the dread perils, the hairbreadth escapes of her 2 adventurous voyages on the Brander. Like, so she went all the way in the flood to go look for Gibbie, to find, because she got a reward from Mr. Sclater, actually, or the newspaper was asking for a reward for anyone who could locate Gibbie, and she knew him as a boy, and so she found where he was. And after all these things, here she was, walking in peace by the side of wee Sir Gibbie, a friend as strong now as he had always been true. She asked herself, or some power within asked her, whence came the troubles that had haunted her life? Why had she been marked out for such misfortunes? Her conscience answered, from her persistence in living by the sale of drink after she had begun to feel it was wrong. Once she noticed it was wrong, sometimes you don't know something's wrong, but once God starts convicting your heart that something is wrong, then it's important to ask him how to follow that. And I was just listening to a class, and he's like, be a bad A about that. If there's little kids around, I won't say it, but he's like, just be that, right? Stand up, take this seriously, and take your life seriously, take your sobriety seriously, take whatever you're doing seriously, and don't let there be any leaks. We're talking about other addictions, but anyway. Thence it was that she had learned to drink, because she wasn't drinking before, she was just selling it, but then she started drinking herself, and that she was even now liable, if not to be found drunk in the streets, yet to go to bed drunk, or as any of her former customers. Anyway, she never wanted them to leave drunk. The cold crept into her bones, and the air seemed full of blue points and clear edges of cold that stung and cut her. That's Leia drinking her water. She was a wretched, a low creature. What would her late aunt think to see her now? What if this cold in her bones were the cold of coming death? To lie for ages in her coffin with her mouth full of earth, longing for whiskey. A verse from the end of the New Testament with "nor drunkards" in it came to her mind. Like, it says, nor drunkards can inherit the kingdom of God. And God is just showing her this, not to condemn her, but that she turns from it. She had always had faith, she said to herself, but let them preach what they liked about salvation by faith. She knew there was nothing but hell for her if she were to die that night. There was Mistress Murkinson looking out of her. There was Mistress Murkinson. Come here, Lele. Looking out of her shop door. You want me to bring this up here? Come here. Come here. I'll get you. Don't hit your head on the table. Hold on. I lifted up the table. So, all right. She's so cute. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, she was respected as much as ever. Would Mistress Murkinson be saved if she died that night? At least somebody would want her, at least nobody would want her damned, whereas not a few, and Mr. Sclater in particular, would think it no fair play if Mistress Kroll was not damned. Oh, but he's changing, all right. So he had scolded her earlier in a wrong way. And when Jesus came, it says he will not burn out a snuffed candle or break a broken reed even more. It's like any kind of real sincere effort towards God, he will draw you in and love you up. And anyway, But nevertheless, she's speaking truth. It's important for us to hold accountability for ourselves. But anyway, like, this is George MacDonald, who so many people thought was a universalist, like thought everyone in the end was going to end up in heaven. And so I can't speak for that. There's that verse that says, every knee shall bow and tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. But, that might be taken out of context. I don't think he was using it for that. I just think, anyway, that's a long theological conversation I won't go into. They turned into the close of the old house of Galbraith. Wee Gibbie's plotting to lead me to repentance, she said to herself. He's going to show me where his father died and where they lived and such misery. And through the drink that I gave him, the respectable house, I kept him to it. So she used to give his father, Sir Gilbert's father, whiskey, and he died of too much whiskey. Like, he died of drinking, but that was his choice as well. He would have me pursuant to leave off the drink. Well, I'm a heap better than I was then, and I will give it up. Give it up I will altogether, afore it comes to the last with me. So she's planning on it, sounds like it. Anyway, you can read that. It's this part. Okay. By the time Gibbie was leading her up the dark stair, at the top of the wide hall-like landing, he opened a door. She drew back with shy amaze. Her first thought was, that proud madam, the minister's wife, will be there. Was a front lying in wait for her again. She looked round angrily at her conductor, but his smile reassured her, and she stepped in. It wasn't Mrs. Sclater there, right? It was almost a grand room, rich and somber in color, old-fashioned in its somewhat stately furniture. A glorious fire was blazing. The candles were burning. The table was covered with a white cloth and laid for two. Gibbie shut the door, placed a chair for Mistress Croll by the fire, seated himself, took out his tablets, and wrote, "Will you be my housekeeper? I will give you £100 a year," and handed them to her. Handed her the chalkboard. I mean, that is so much money back then. "Lord, Sir Gibbie," she cried, jumping to her feet. "Have you your wits, like lost your wits? How would an old wife like me look in such a place and such duds as this? It would Satan lunch, and that he can but seldom." I don't know if she's talking about Satan or what. I don't know. Gibbie rose and, taking her by the hand, led her to the door of an adjoining room. Okay, so you can see what she said. If you want to write it for us in the comments, feel free. I appreciate it. Unless someone already has, but you can as well. It'll push this video out to more people. Gibbie rose and, taking her by the hand, led her to the door of an adjoining room. It was a bedroom as grand as the room they had left, and if Mistress Croll was surprised before, she was astonished now. A fire was burning here too. Candles were alight on the dressing table. This is the 1800s, so they didn't have lights, right? A hot bath stood ready. On the bed lay a dress of rich black satin, with linen and everything down or up to collars, cuffs, mittens, caps, and shoes, like warm clothes as well, right? All these things Gibbie had bought himself, using the knowledge he had gathered in shopping with Mrs. Sclater and the advice of her dressmaker, whom he had taken into his confidence and who had entered heartily into his plan, right? He had it all made for her. These are handmade, like shop-made clothes. He made signs to Mistress Croll that everything there was at her service and left her. Like one in a dream, she yielded to the rush of events, not too much bewildered, to dress with care, neither too old, nor too wicked, nor too ugly to find pleasure in it, right? Like there's a guy that does my nails now, and he was suggested this pink, sparkly color this past time. It's pink. You can't really tell it looks white, but it's like this color of pink, right? this light pink. And it was super sweet. And it reminded me of like a dress in Sleeping Beauty or something. And I took delight in it, even though, I used to like play soccer with the boys and stuff. And I mean, I was also a cheerleader, but anyway, I had two older brothers. So anyway, okay, so she took delight in it. To find pleasure in it. She might have been a born lady just restored to the habits of her youth, to judge by her delight over the ivory brushes and the tortoiseshell comb and great mirror. In an hour or so she made her appearance. I can hardly say reappeared. She was so altered. She entered the room neither blushing nor smiling, but wiping the tears from her eyes like a too blessed child. Thank you, God. You're so good to us. What Mrs. Sclater would have felt, I dare hardly think, for there was the horrid woman, arrayed as nearly after her fashion as Gibbie had been able to get her up. A very good get-up, nevertheless, it was, and satisfactory to both concerned. Mistress Croll went out a decent-looking poor body, and entered a not uncomely matron of the housekeeper class. It's a different class than she was before. Rather agreeable to look upon, who had just stood a nerve-shaking but not unpleasant surprise, and was recovering. Gibbie was so satisfied with her appearance that, come of age as he was, and vagrant no more, he first danced round her several times with a candle in his hand, much to the danger but nowise to the detriment of her finery, then set it down and executed his old La Volta of delight, which, as always, he finished by standing on one leg, right? He's just dancing in delight. They sat down to a nice, nondescript meal, also of Gibbie's own providing. When their meal was ended, he went to a bureau and brought thence a paper, plainly written to this effect. So it was already written, okay? I agree to do whatever Sir Gilbert Galbraith may request of me, so long as it shall not be against my conscience, and consent that if I taste whiskey once, he shall send me away immediately without further reason given. Wow. So she had to agree to that. If she chose to, it's a choice. He handed it to Mistress Croll. She read and instantly looked about for pen and ink. She dreaded seeming for a moment to hesitate. He brought them to her, and she signed, and they shook hands. He then conducted her all over the house, first to the rooms prepared for his study and bedroom. I think he's going to college now. I'm not sure. And next to the room in the garret, which he had just left just as it was when his father died in it. There he gave her a look by which he meant to say, see what whiskey brings people to, but which her conscience interpreted, see what you brought my father to. But he wasn't saying that. This is sometimes the language, like him not being able to speak. But next on the floor between, he showed her a number of bedrooms. This is what shame does when we keep carrying shame instead of bringing it to God to heal, right? It's like watching that sunrise or I guess probably sunset, because I live in the West Coast, so it sets over here. And so does Samuel. Anyway, next on the floor between, he showed her a number of bedrooms, all newly repaired and fresh painted, with double windows, the inside ones filled with frosted glass. These rooms he gave her to understand he wished her to furnish, getting as many things as she could from Mistress Murkison. So this was her first job, right? Going back then to the sitting room, he proceeded to explain his plans, telling her he had furnished the house that he might not any longer be himself such a stranger as to have no place to take a stranger to. Then he got a Bible. There was in the room, and showed her those words in the book of Exodus. Also, thou shalt not oppress a stranger, for you know the heart of a stranger, seeing you were strangers in the land of Egypt, right? In Egypt, the Israelites were enslaved. And so they were once alien and got mistreated. So don't mistreat strangers. In Europe and Greece and stuff and other places, the Middle East, they're very hospitable to strangers. They understand that you could be entertaining angels still. That's a verse in the Old Testament. And while she thought again of her wandering through the country, and her nights in the open air made her understand that whomsoever he should at any time bring home, she was to treat as his guest. She might get a servant to wait upon herself, he said, but she must herself help him to wait upon his guests. In the name of the Son of Man, in the name of Jesus Christ, right? Who's the Son of Man, who served himself. He gave us his own life. All right, we're almost, let me see if, oh good, okay. We're almost at the end of this chapter. Otherwise I was going to stop because it's when I add the other 6 minutes, it'll be an hour. But there's like 3 more paragraphs. She expressed hearty acquiescence, but would not hear of a servant. The more work, the better for her, she said. She would tomorrow arrange for giving up her shop and disposing of her stock of the furniture in her garret. But Gibbie requested the keys of both these places. Next, he insisted that she should never utter a word as to the use he intended making of his house. If the thing came out, it would ruin his plans. So you'll see he has this other entrance, so people don't know what house it is, so that they won't come into the other part of the house and steal stuff. You'll see. Anyway, a spoiler alert, right? He intended making of his house. If the thing came out, it would ruin his plans, and he must give them up altogether. And thereupon he took her to the ground floor and showed her a door in communication with a poor little house behind, by which he intended to introduce and dismiss his guests in this little poorhouse that's connected to this house, right? That they should not know where they had spent the night. Then he made her read to him the 107th Psalm, after which he left her, saying he would come to the house as soon as the session began. I think school, right? Which would be in a week. Until then, he should be at Mr. Sclater's, left alone in the great home, like one with whom the most beneficent of fairies had been busy. The first thing Mistress Croale did was to go and have a good look at herself from head to foot in the same mirror that had enlightened Donald as to his outermost man. It was in the furniture shop. Very different was the reflection it caused in Mistress Croale. She was satisfied with everything she saw there except her complexion, and that she resolved should improve, right, after she got withdrawal from. Anyway, she was almost painfully happy. Out there was the woody hill, dark and dismal and cold, through which she had come, sad and shivering and haunted with miserable thoughts, into warmth and splendor and luxury and bliss. This all could be hers. And she loved serving Sir Gibbie, right? Wee Sir Gibbie had made a lady of her. If only poor Sir George were alive to see and share, right? If his dad was only still alive. There was but one thing wanted to make it paradise indeed. A good tumbler of toddy by the fire before she went to bed. That's whiskey. Nope. Right? Then, wow. God is so good. God is so good. I wish you well on giving up any addiction that's been in your life that keeps you in a lesser place. You're worth so much more. You are always worth so much more. Anyway, then first she thought of the vow she had made as she signed the paper and shuddered, not at the thought of breaking it, but at the thought of having to keep it, and no help. It was the easiest thing in the world to get a bottle of whiskey. She had but to run to Jink Lane at the farthest to her own old house, which for all Mr. Sclater was a whiskey shop yet. She had emptied her till and had money in her pocket. Who was there to tell? She would not have a chance when Sir Gibbie came home to her. She must make use of what time was left her. She was safe now from going too far because she must give it up. And why not then have one farewell night of pleasure to bid a last goodbye to her old friend whiskey? No, right? That reminds me of that song, Tennessee Whiskey, when he finally falls in love with this girl that's so much better than whiskey, right? I did this skating thing to it, but I just took it down. I don't know. Anyway, what should she have done without him? living in the cold wind by a dike side, or going down to the Dower like a shot on her brander, right? Like on the raft that she was on in the overflowed lake or river. Thus the tempting passion, thus, for aught I know, a tempting devil at the ear of her mind as well. But with that came the face of Gibbie. She thought how troubled that face would look if she failed him, right? Because he loved her and was giving her this wonderful chance. What a lost, come here, Lele. What a lost, irredeemable wretch was she about to make of herself after all he had done for her. No, if whiskey was heaven and the want of it was hell, she would not do it. She ran to the door, locked it, brought away the key, and laid it under the Bible from which she had been reading to Sir Gibbie. That was like their evening prayer, right? Perhaps she might have done better than betake herself again to her finery, but it did help her through the rest of the evening, like looking at the wonderful dress and everything, right? And the combs and everything. But it did help her get through the rest of the evening, and she went to her grand bed, not only sober, but undefiled of the enemy. When Gibbie came to her a week after he came to a true woman, one who had kept faith with him. Wow. All right, the next chapter is chapter LVI, The Laird and the Preacher. All right. And I don't know, we only have this much left. I don't know how much we read tonight, but we might be able to finish it, I guess, if I read fast. All right. Much love. Thanks for being here. I got to add the other part, edit it, and upload it for us. Much love.